And thanks to At Home for joining us this hour. How was your weekend? Mine was fine. I caught a brown trout, which was awesome. Then I put it back. I was supposed to get a new washing machine this weekend, but I blew it off and didn't do it. So that means the old washing machine has another week to blow up and leak. I did some filing. Susan made shepherd's pie. Patriots lost. Remember normal weekends, right? This weekend, I actually tried to pretend that things are normal now. Clearly, they are not. Even before we had our national fire drill this morning, when it looked like the president was firing the deputy attorney general overseeing the Russia investigation, even before that fire drill this morning, it was clear through the end of last week, all through this weekend and through today, that the news is just persistently off its axis right now. And I know that can make it a little bit hard to get your balance. I know. We're going to have more on the Rod Rosenstein fire drill, which did sort of look like an emergency this morning, and then it wasn't. He's still in his job. We're going to have more on that to come, including speaking with a senator who's been trying to protect the special counsel's investigation from just that kind of threat that we went through the motions of this morning. So that's ahead tonight, this hour. But I got to tell you, for the second time in just a few days, we're actually starting this show tonight without knowing if our first interview is going to happen or not. You might remember this happened at the end of last week as well, when we started the show expecting to be joined by one of the lawyers representing Christine Blasey Ford, who has accused Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh of sexually assaulting her when he was 17. That interview with Dr. Ford's lawyer at the last minute did not happen. Because Dr. Ford's legal team was deep into their negotiations with the Senate Judiciary Committee about whether or not Christine Blasey Ford would appear before that committee to testify about what she says was her experience with Brett Kavanaugh. Those negotiations were ongoing that evening, ended up scuttling that interview for us. Those negotiations actually continued through this weekend, through the fishing and skipping the washing machine and all the rest of it. It was not until mid-afternoon yesterday, on Sunday, that we got word that, in fact, Dr. Christine Blasey Ford will testify at the Senate on Thursday of this week. The White House and the Republican-led Judiciary Committee are still insisting that no other witnesses will be allowed to testify, even witnesses who Ford says could corroborate elements of her story. Importantly, the White House and Senate Republicans are also insisting that the FBI must not be allowed to reopen its background investigation into Brett Kavanaugh to examine this allegation from Christine Blasey Ford. So no external investigation, no witnesses, but Ford herself and Kavanaugh himself will testify at that hearing on Thursday morning. And if you were looking for the universe to give you a patient little explainer about why it might be a good idea to have the FBI do background checks on nominees, why it's a good idea to have the nation's premier federal law enforcement agency look into allegations against people who are up for high government positions. If you were looking for bald-faced proof that it is not just an inexplicable plan, but a terrible plan to, in fact, proceed with this nomination without allowing the FBI to check this stuff out, that bald-faced proof arrived just as the details are being finalized this weekend for that committee hearing on Thursday. Because just as that hearing was finally getting all set up, all nice and tidy, no witnesses, just Kavanaugh and Ford, one word against the other, no outside investigation, that's it, we'll finally be done with this. Just as that was all tied up with a bow, the next one broke. You see the headline here. Senate Democrats investigate a new allegation of sexual misconduct from Brett Kavanaugh's college years. A college classmate of Brett Kavanaugh named Deborah Ramirez claims that during a party where students were drinking, Kavanaugh put his genitals in her face, forcing her to touch them as she tried to push him away. Quote, "I was embarrassed and ashamed and humiliated." She remembers Kavanaugh standing to her right and laughing, pulling up his pants. Brett was laughing, she said. I can still see his face and his hips coming forward like when you pull up your pants. She recalled another male student shouting about the incident. Somebody yelled down the hall, "Brett Kavanaugh just put his penis in Debbie's face," she said. It was his full name. I don't think it was just Brett. And I remember hearing that and being mortified that this was out there. Another classmate of Deborah Ramirez is telling The New Yorker that while he, the classmate, was not present for the party, he says he is, quote, 100% sure that he was told at the time that Brett Kavanaugh was the student who exposed himself to Deborah Ramirez at that party. The same classmate also independently confirmed a bunch of the same details that Deborah Ramirez told The New Yorker about the incident, including the specific room on the specific floor in the specific building where the party took place. The classmate tells The New Yorker, quote, "I've known this all along. Quote, it's been on my mind all these years when his name came up. It was a big deal." So this was published by The New Yorker. Again, this was published by The New Yorker just as the Judiciary Committee was announcing that it had reached a deal to accept testimony from Christine Blasey Ford. The woman who says that Brett Kavanaugh did this to her at this party at Yale when they were undergraduates, she apparently did not approach reporters about this matter. Rather, it was The New Yorker that approached her after they had learned about this alleged incident from others. Now that the allegation is public, though, Ramirez says she wants the allegation assessed impartially. Quote, "For Ramirez, the sudden attention has been unwelcome. She was at first hesitant to speak publicly, but Ramirez is now calling for the FBI to investigate Kavanaugh's role in the incident." Quote, "I would think an FBI investigation would be warranted," she said. So once again, we're back in the position of wondering why Republicans in the Senate and why the White House are insisting that the FBI must not be allowed to look at this as part of their background investigation into Kavanaugh. The FBI looks into allegations of sexual misconduct and all sorts of different kinds of misconduct. As a matter of course, when they do background investigations, that's what background investigations are for. Why the White House insists that Brett Kavanaugh must be exempt from that process here? That was a hard thing to explain before there were multiple allegations against him. Now it seems almost like a short-sighted thing, a short-sighted way for them to have approached this. Right? Imagine this having gone a different way, right? First allegation comes up, they reopen the background investigation, have the FBI look into it, the FBI finds what it finds. That process is underway. They set a hearing, they're going to hear back from the FBI. Now there's another allegation. We will also ask the FBI to look into that. Then there's another allegation at some point, right? We'll ask the FBI to look into that. It's a way to govern the process. It also shows that you're allowing these allegations to be investigated, that you're not trying to sweep them under the rug. In this case, they are left now with mounting refusals to let the FBI look into this. For the first allegation, now for the second allegation as well. Why can't the FBI look into this? There are two other things from this New Yorker piece that are going to, I think, end up being important here. The first is about how Republican senators handled this second allegation. This is about the timing. And again, this is about that Yale allegation that I just described. Quote, "Senior Republican staffers also learned of this Yale allegation last week and, in conversations with The New Yorker, expressed concern about its potential impact on Kavanaugh's nomination. Soon after, Senate Republicans issued renewed calls to accelerate the timing of a committee vote. Hey, there's another allegation coming. Hurry, get him through. Get the vote done. Get the vote done before anything more comes out. Get him on the court." It's not a good look. But then there's one other element of the story that becomes important for the interview that I think we are about to have in just a minute tonight. One of the sticking points in the negotiations about this hearing on Thursday, and Christine Blasey Ford testifying about what she says was this sexual assault by Kavanaugh, one of the sticking points in setting up that hearing has been whether or not anybody other than Ford and Kavanaugh would testify. In Blasey Ford's letter notifying Senator Dianne Feinstein about the alleged assault, she names one of Kavanaugh's classmates as having been in the room while the assault happened. Now, the classmate has denied taking part in the assault or witnessing it. He told an interview from a conservative magazine, quote, "I don't remember any of that stuff going on with girls." But I think this is the other thing that's going to end up being important from The New Yorker, given that Dr. Ford has named this Kavanaugh classmate, Mark Judge, as essentially being complicit in that alleged assault by Brett Kavanaugh back when they were 17. Republicans thus far are refusing to call him as a witness. But this is reported by Ronan Farrow and Jane Mayer at The New Yorker this weekend. Quote, after seeing Mark Judge's denial, Elizabeth Razor, who met Judge at Catholic University and was in a relationship with him for about 3 years, she said that she felt morally obligated to challenge his account that, quote, no horseplay took place at Georgetown Prep with women. Elizabeth Razor stressed that under normal circumstances, she said, I wouldn't reveal information that was told in confidence, but she said, quote, I can't stand by and watch him lie. In an interview with The New Yorker, Razor says, quote, Mark told me a very different story. She recalled that Mark Judge had told her ashamedly of an incident that involved him and other boys taking turns having sex with a drunk woman. Now, an attorney for Mark Judge denies that categorically. But even before The New Yorker published that account yesterday, it was hard to understand why Republicans agreed to hear testimony from Christine Blasey Ford and from Brett Kavanaugh about what she alleges. But they will not allow Mark Judge, who was reportedly in the room, to be questioned by senators at all. That was the state of things. Right? And then, on top of that, we get more. Now we have this. Quote, I represent a woman with credible information regarding Judge Kavanaugh and Mark Judge. We will be demanding the opportunity to present testimony to the committee and will likewise be demanding that Mark Judge and others be subpoenaed to testify. This, as you can see here, is from attorney Michael Avenatti, who is best known for representing Stormy Daniels in her legal dispute with the president, a dispute which has already led the president's longtime personal lawyer to plead guilty to multiple felonies, including 2 campaign finance felonies, which Michael Cohen said in court he was directed to commit by the president himself. Shortly after Michael Avenatti posted that claim online that he represents a woman with credible information regarding Judge Kavanaugh and Mark Judge, the chief counsel working for Senator Chuck Grassley in the Judiciary Committee emailed Mr. Avenatti saying, quote, you claim to have information you consider credible regarding Judge Kavanaugh and Mark Judge. Please advise of this information immediately so that Senate investigators may promptly begin an inquiry. And then, in response to that request from the Senate Judiciary Committee, Michael Avenatti started to spell it out. If you have not seen this already and you don't know what I'm about to say, I will tell you there's a chance that you might not want to hear this, which is me warning you that you might want to mute me or distract the kids if they're watching with you, if you don't want to hear this or if you don't want your kids to hear this. But I'm going to read it. And actually, before I even read it to you, I will tell you tonight in advance that Judge Kavanaugh has this evening denied the implication of what Mr. Avenatti spells out here. But this is what he spells out here. Quote, this is a letter to the Senate Judiciary Committee. Quote, we are aware of significant evidence of multiple house parties in the Washington, D.C. area during the early 1980s, during which Brett Kavanaugh, Mark Judge, and others would participate in the targeting of women with alcohol/drugs in order to allow a, quote, train of men to subsequently gang rape them. There are multiple witnesses that will corroborate these facts, and each of them must be called to testify publicly. As a starting point, Senate investigators should pose the following questions to Judge Kavanaugh. Number 1, did you ever target one or more women for sex or rape at a house party? Did you ever assist Mark Judge or others in doing so? Number 2, did you ever attend any house party during which a woman was gang raped or used for sex by multiple men? Number 3, did you ever witness a line of men outside a bedroom at any house party where you understood a woman was in the bedroom being raped or taken advantage of? Number 4, did you ever participate in any sexual conduct with a woman at a house party whom you understood to be intoxicated or under the influence of drugs? Number 5, did you ever communicate with Mark Judge or anyone else about your participation in a, quote, train involving an intoxicated woman? And number 6, did you ever object or attempt to prevent one or more men from participating in the rape or taking advantage of a woman at any house party? Please note that we will provide additional evidence relating to the above conduct, both to the committee and the American public, in the coming days. Now, that obviously is a list of questions, but within it is a rather staggering set of allegations. NBC News has not confirmed any of the allegations here, either explicit or implied. Mr. Avenatti has thus far not identified his client, but as you heard there in the piece of this that I just read, he says he has evidence to support these allegations and that evidence will be forthcoming both to the committee and to the public. Mr. Avenatti said today that he represents multiple clients in this matter, most of whom are witnesses that he says will support these allegations, but one of whom he is describing as a victim. Avenatti saying today, quote, "Warning. My client, Ree Kavanaugh, has previously done work within the State Department, the U.S. Mint, and the Department of Justice. She has been granted multiple security clearances in the past. The GOP and others better be very careful in trying to suggest that she is not credible." Michael Avenatti now says that this client is about to go public with her claims. He also says that in advance of that, he's willing to explain what exactly her claims are. And so that's the interview that we are about to have. Even in advance of hearing what it is he has to say, though, it is now quite impossible to avoid the fact that the three women who have come forward or are in the process of coming forward with allegations concerning Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh, all three of them, Christine Blasey Ford, Deborah Ramirez this weekend, and now Michael Avenatti's client, all of them say they would like their claims to be subjected to scrutiny by the FBI. If the FBI is responsible for doing background checks on nominees for high office, and they are, all three of these women now say they have information they would like to provide to the FBI for that purpose as it relates to Brett Kavanaugh, so the FBI can assess what these women have to say. And that is something no lawyer would ever advise a client to do if there was any worry at all that the client's story was a lie. We do not know any more about these new allegations than Mr. Avenatti has thus far said publicly, but he's now going to detail them to us live here on the air. That's next.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.